Welcome to the podcast Running Toward. This podcast tells stories of ordinary people who couldn't look away once they saw the hidden crisis in foster care and the families impacted. Our guests share heartbreak that led them to take reluctant and unexpected small, faithful steps toward the most vulnerable in their communities. Not because they had a plan, and not because they felt ready, but because they couldn't unsee their pain. You'll hear how people living normal lives discover that getting closer changed them. Their comfort mattered less, their grip on uncertainty faded, and their faith got feet in quiet, everyday ways. Ending the crisis for one or for all isn't a quick fix. It's a long, slow, often messy journey alongside one of the most overlooked and misunderstood groups in our community. Running Toward gives you a front row seat to the hidden crisis in foster care and the families impacted, and to the ordinary people who choose not to look away. Welcome, everybody. We are back with the Crafts, and now we are going to get to hear from Ariel, otherwise known as Mike's better half. So, but first, let me just share a little bit about kind of her passion and her unique lane in this space. She was not only mothering children in her home, but God put this deep burden on her to mother children that a lot of people don't see, even in the foster care space. There's ones in families that when they're removed and placed in foster care, they get to a certain age and the statistics would tell us that they're just not going to be adopted. And unfortunately for those kids, the reality of what happens later down in their life as they turn 18 and become young adults, the statistics are abysmal, and they end up in homelessness and trafficking and jail and all in poverty. And the statistics are just heartbreaking when you read about them and you understand where all the other kind of lanes in our community that a lot of nonprofits and churches try to take on is fueled a lot of times by these kids who, through no fault of their own, have come to a point where they're young adults and they have nobody in their corner. And that's really where Ariel kind of feels this great burden and has stepped in some pretty incredible ways. So, but like all our other stories, there is no solution really to this problem. There's a lot of great stewardship and a lot of great ways to get close to it in relationships. But Ariel, if we can just start with, before your focus ever turned to the aging out youth population or youth that have been in foster care and now turned 18, how did motherhood first shape the way that you understood responsibility with the kids that were in your home?
Speaking specifically to the kids that were in my home, like adopted too and fostered, or just like being a mom?
I mean, being a mom, just in general, being a mom, like what the responsibility of that?
When God created the world, he started with Adam and Eve, and he started with a family and building a family. And that beautiful institution, relationship, whatever you want to call it, is really the foundation of all culture. And it's such a huge gift and privilege to be able to fulfill, I believe, what God intended to be like one of the most impactful, powerful relationships on earth. And so when we think back to like all the way at the beginning, you know, God's perfect design was, hey, I'm going to create these families that are going to populate the earth and glorify me. And to be able to walk in that role as a mom who loves Jesus and is able to be in partnership with a husband and a man who loves the Lord, and we get this opportunity to shepherd and steward children for God's glory. I just take that really seriously. And I think that's a huge responsibility and a high calling. And I say that sensitively because I know that there are a lot of women who may not be married right now or who may not be able to easily conceive. And we had our own journey with that. But speaking specifically to those who are moms or who are mothering in some way, it's a really, really incredible way to honor God and be obedient.
Absolutely. So in motherhood, early days, flashback to when you've got just your two biological daughters, you're, staying at home mom, and um what did you expect motherhood to look like, mm, as you were young, rose-colored glasses?
I think that I thought at the time that it was much more formulaic and that I did have a lot more control of the situation. Like it was highly structured and I, we kind of all thinking back to like, oh, this is how it was for me when I grew up and, um, things unfold this way and your family looks this way and just expectations you sort of build out in your mind. Like it felt more, um, yeah, I don't know why formulaic is the only word that comes to mind, but like if we do this and we do this,
A
then
plus
this is going
B
to be the
plus
outcome.
B equals C,
Right.
right?
So I was doing the A's and the B's and the C's and, it
Well,
was
because we
going
have
to,
parenting books that tell us
right.
you do this, you do this, you do this, it produces
Yeah.
this.
So I think subconsciously and maybe a little consciously, I was very much in that place.
Hmm.
Which is a
Right.
thing.
So in that, you got your formula, you're thinking, cruising along. Were there earlier pieces, even, maybe after the international adoption, or maybe even in the first, months of fostering, were there pieces that felt heavier than you ever imagined in being a mom, in that role as God gave to you as being a mom? What were those pieces that felt heavier than you're like, whoa, this is kind of unexpected?
Certainly the heaviness of, wow, I'm leading, guiding, shepherding a human being who has the opportunity to, make their own impact on the world is a really big deal. And like, we're going to play a role in that, like, holy bananas. Like, we need the Holy Spirit for that. So that's heavy. But then you add in, I would say maybe when Shannon entered our family, a whole lot of things that were just, oh my goodness, like, this is really heavy. We have a daughter now who we don't really know the extent of her trauma and her life experiences for the first 3 years of her life. We actually don't even speak the same language as her right now. And she's right smack in between my other two daughters. And I I don't always like how I feel about the way things are going. And this is really uncomfortable.
Hmm.
And I need the Holy Spirit so much. It's heavy. That's when the formula starts breaking down a little bit. Like, oh boy, we don't know how her life experiences are going to impact her long term, and now that's going to really affect how we parent. um that's heavy. Yeah, and then you start kind of like peeling back the like, wow, there's a lot that I actually don't have control over.
Hmm.
But then it kind of starts like, for me it started expanding, like, oh my goodness, what about kids that don't have the opportunity to be raised in a home and a family like this? What happens to them? And that's really heavy.
Right. So even thinking about that, you've got two biological, you have international adoption. Now you guys are starting to step into fostering. Um, Fostering doesn't simplify any of this current unraveling of your A plus B plus C. So, how did that deepen it, complicate it, change your view of what it meant to be a mother to now children who may stay, may not stay, may have experienced a mom, may have never experienced a mom? Like, how did that change your, like, whoa, this again, new pivot?
Yeah. I think that at first it was like, whoa, I may be the only mom that they get to have a relationship with who loves the Lord and wants to be faithful and demonstrate the love of Christ to them in this short amount of time that I have. Like, they may not ever get to have this experience again, like being with uh in a home with a family with someone who like wants to mother them in the way that God has, led me and called me to. But not saying that like I didn't mess up like 100 times, and I'm so so many things that I have not done right. And, but yeah, it definitely impacted me that way first. And then also like sort of grieving for them that they hadn't had that, or that they had been hurt too
in that
in
relationship.
that relationship. And so really praying through, like, as far as the Holy Spirit, like the Holy Spirit needing him to be the one to give me the wisdom and the strength and the ability to, like, hey, in this little time that we have, whether it's a month, whether it's 6 months, a couple years, the rest of their life, give me the grace to help redeem that. Um, which is super humbling and heavy,
Right.
but a huge privilege for sure.
So in that season, when your kids are little, you've got 1, 2, 3, now 4, 5 at any different given time. Um, how did parenting biological kids, adopted child, foster kiddos, and having kind of a mom hat that was a little bit divided on some level because you've got kids in 3 different stages of being your kids. How did that impact your mothering? How did that impact your view of your role as a mom? How did that impact even your view maybe of the Lord and what he called you to?
Yeah, it's so crazy because I think I early on had more of this like one size fits all approach. Like, we're all going to do it this way,
Right.
and we're going to treat all the kids this way, and everything's fair, and this is how it goes. And, you know, then it turned to, oh, actually, one, honoring the fact that each of our children are very different people,
Right. Even your biological ones.
even the biological.
100%.
Then you have, okay, now we have kids that have had very, very different experiences, birth to 3, who have experienced very painful things, who think differently, whose brains have been permanently impacted by their traumatic experiences. So they respond differently, they react differently. Um, and then kids with extremely severe medical complications and needs, and every single one of them so different. And so it really turned to like, Holy Spirit, help me have your eyes to see what each of them need, and give us the grace and the strength to steward them uniquely, which is hard because even between the kids, it doesn't always look fair.
No.
Um,
Exactly.
and so that's really challenging. It's definitely the most stretching thing of my entire life, but it will lead you to depend on the Lord, on the Spirit, in a way that I don't know what else like in my life could have. So yes, growing as a mom in that role, so stretching, so humbling because of how many needs we had going at one time.
Right.
Yeah.
So, outside looking in, your plate's pretty full. You've got a pastor who's a husband, you've got 5 kids with 5 unique stories, with 5 unique personalities, 5 unique ways that they need you showing up for them to help them be their best. And so, full plate, right? And so, you're like, clear next step. Clear next step is to think about other children further outside the walls of your home, right? So, at what point did your concern extend beyond the kiddos in your home, which was more than a full-time job, to be, you know what? There's these other ones outside these walls also that have not had a mother family situation.
um, well, he can either correct or verify or jump in on this. I think that my focus, like my peripheral focus, has been on what's going on with kids outside of our home for a really long time. And after Shannon came home from Uganda and we were starting the fostering process, we had always been in youth and young adult ministry. Like, I love teens and young adults. They're my people. I'm very drawn to them. And then when I started hearing about what was going on with teens and young adults that were in foster care and were aging out, and how essentially invisible they were,
Mhm.
I couldn't get that out of my head and out of my heart. And so I I think it was the Lord, like, not leaving me alone about it. And also, when you read the Bible and you read passages like Isaiah 58 and others that make it so clear that we are supposed to have eyes for the least of these, um, I'm like, okay, well, I can't shake the fact that there's this whole population that is totally flying under the radar. And even though society can't see them very well, God can see them, and I can now. So I have to do something about it. And knowing that if all the way back to the garden, like we were talking about, if this beautiful family idea of God's is what every child is supposed to have and need to thrive in life and flourish, and these kids aren't getting that, like, oh dear, we have to fix that, right? I mean, no wonder their tragically statistics are what they are for that population. So I really couldn't rest about this whole issue. Um, and we talked about it a lot because our kids were younger at the time, and I was like, okay, well, should we foster teens? Like, should we adopt teens? For those of you who don't know, if you go online in your state and actually nationwide, there are databases of waiting children. So there's heart galleries, there's different groups that promote profiles of children that are waiting to be adopted. So you can actually filter by like gender, age, sibling group, all these different things. And you can just look through pages of kids that are waiting and available to be adopted. That is really, really heartbreaking. That's a hard thing for me to reconcile. But I would look at those pages because I was tracking. It was mostly kids like 8 and older that are on the website, and mostly teens, just waiting. So anyway, we had prayed about it. And I just couldn't like let it go, that there are kids out there that need moms and dads. They need people to love them.
So why you though? Why is that when on the outside looking in, it appears like y'all have already stepped into hard and messy. So why is that your unique responsibility to take action on rather than just pray about?
I don't know, but um I can't I can't ignore what's going on, even though it's hard for most people to see. Um, somebody has to, someone has to step up, and someone has to stand in the gap for them. And um, I just couldn't shake. The Lord was so clear, like, Ariel, you have to do something. Um, and He called us to San Antonio on purpose. He called us here to this city for a purpose. Our intersection with you was 100% the Lord, and the Spirit is moving, and I just had to obey because Jesus, it's Christmas right now as we're recording this, hence the poinsettia, and we're celebrating Jesus coming to earth for us and leaving heaven and being born in a barn and dying on a cross. And He did that for me, so I count it a joy and a privilege to be able to lay down whatever to step in for kids that are in a lot of hurt and a lot of brokenness. And so I'm not really sure why. I'm not sure why me. I just my heart is broken for them.
And I would just come in to say, we've had some intense fellowship about this issue, and what's been consistent is Ariel's just heavy burden for these kids that are either aging out of foster care or are not able to be adopted. And that has remained consistent for over the last 10 years of our marriage. And I think what was maybe confusing for her for a while was, what am I supposed to do about this? And we would go on and on, back and forth. And she'd say, well, I think we're supposed to adopt a teenager, or we're supposed to foster a teenager. And matter of fact, in the first episode, I talked about how we had our two boys that we welcomed into our home. And that same day, we actually talked to our foster agency to say, do you think this is a good idea to take in a teenager? And they were like, no, not right now. You've got 3 little kids, 5 and under. No, absolutely not. This isn't for you. And so I think for her, she was trying to figure out what does this look like and what does God want me to do? And what has been so amazing is to see how the Lord has, I think, even allowed her to have a greater impact than she probably even realized.
I agree, 100%. So now for the audience, because this is a very unknown space. Like, it's very much we may know about the baby that's at the hospital addicted to drugs, but we don't know about the 18-year-old who is mid-senior year maybe, and they've now, the term is aged out of foster care, meaning the state of Texas has said, and pretty much every other state at 18 has said, we're all done being your parent. There are some extended programs, but the youth has to say yes that they want to, step into that. Most of them by then are like, I'm all done with the state of Texas being my parent. I'm out. So at 18, they're essentially on their own. So can you kind of explain this whole space of aging out, kind of just, the how a youth experiences that, and kind of what that looks like for them in this season?
I would say there are 2 tracks that most 18-year-olds aging out can take right now. And one track is that they elect to stay in extended foster care until they're 21, which gives them some benefits from the state. That would include housing and some stipends for other needs to be met. That's great because it allows them to have a place to live and to have some of their other basic needs covered while they're trying to navigate the transition to adulthood. The other track is you age out, you get a one-time check from the state, and then you are completely on your own to navigate adulthood. That would mean that you are trying to figure out how to have a roof over your head, how to feed yourself, how to be employed, how to maybe pursue school, all while not having a healthy family support system around you or strong, stable connections. A lot of the young adults that are aging, teens and young adults that are aging out, do have relationship with some bio family. Many do. And I want to be careful and delicate in the way that I talk about that. But for many of them, even with those existing biological connections, they are not safe or healthy connections. So they're still lacking what we would all know as a normal, to use that word, family experience. That's a very sanitized version.
Right. So in the recording of this time, I have a 21-year-old and 2 19-year-olds in college. And as I've, over the years learned more about this aging out population, I'm looking at my kids who have, for the most part, grown up in a healthy home. We've made epic mistakes, but in general, gotten to college, have a ton of people that love them, support them, and they need every bit of it in college to be successful and to be rescued out of, poor choices or life just happening to them. And to think about them at 18 just being pushed out into the world and like, hey, good luck, hope things go well. Mm-hmm. When these kids do age out, where do they land? What happens to them in general?
Well, most of them, a lot of them, we're seeing many young women starting to have babies at a very young age, usually maybe even while they're in care or when they've just aged out of care. So when you have girls that are pregnant and then unfortunately a lot of times make choices to be in relationship with people that do not treat them with respect or dignity, they end up in basically perpetuating the cycle that they were in. A lot of those children end up back in foster care within a couple years. And that truly, I'm telling you, is not just a statistic. That is actually what is happening. A lot of the young men now, I mean, I can speak to this with faces in real life that a lot of the young men are ending up spending time in jail at some point. Um and a lot of them are struggling with homelessness, housing instability, they're in poverty, really having a hard time maintaining employment. A lot of them, their heart is to be able to work, but it's very hard to maintain jobs because of the life experiences that they've had leading up to aging out. And of course, navigating higher education is also very challenging when you're completely alone. So for a lot of them, that in itself is, I mean, extremely difficult. Um, so they really are left on their own to um a really, really harsh world and a lot of difficult consequences from their life and their life experiences.
Yeah. When we were going through foster parent training ourselves, Linda, the lady that was teaching us, would talk about how the kids that come into your home, they're going to be a chronological age, whatever that age is, 6, 7, 18.
Right.
They're going to be in an emotional age, which rarely matches their chronological age, usually
Right.
2, 3, 4, 5 years younger. So in this scenario, you got an 18-year-old, but emotionally, mentally, they're 14, 15 because they haven't had adults pouring into them, teaching them how to become adults. Most of them haven't been in school regularly. They haven't had healthy relationships around them. So the world sees them as an age. Inside, they're an age. And then the things that have been done to them or around them make them this experiential age that is like way beyond
Right.
18.
Right.
And how does that young adult, how does all that play into them entering into a world where they got to figure things out for themselves?
It's so hard.
It's what you shared earlier about your kiddos, Jennifer. I mean, if you just push them out into the world at 18, it would have been a disaster, right? And it is a disaster. And through Ariel, I've connected with a lot of these young people, and man, when you start to hear their stories and the things that have happened to them, it's no wonder why they sign up for trafficking, and some of them don't sign up, some of them do, some of them are willingly saying, hey, well, at least I'm getting paid, at least somebody's taking care of me, at least. It's no wonder why they end up pregnant. It's no wonder why 97% of them are in poverty. It's no wonder why these boys steal, because they don't know how they can't keep a job, and so how are they going to be able to eat if they don't go steal at a store? I mean, it's just, it makes sense when you realize the dysfunction, that they've had nobody help them lay a solid foundation.
Mhm.
And so for most of them, it's not their fault. But it's
Yeah, it's when you're lacking a lot of skills, communication skills, social skills, and then you're probably struggling because you may not have ever been able to be on track academically because of moving around so many different times and not having people support you or get you the resources that you need consistently. um and then you have this stage of development that's years behind where your chronological age would be. There are so many factors that play into this. And then, yes, a lot of them have had experiences that have actually normalized trauma and abuse.
Mhm.
So then that's what they, think is normal and even gravitate back to that. And so it's just really intense and so challenging.
And speak to that on the angle of, like, you kind of touched on it, but how that speaks into their identity. how they view themselves, which means then also how they let other people treat them.
Mm-hmm. Right, because I think the whole idea of like worth, and do they feel that they're worthy, or do they feel that they're worth anything? Many of them no, because they weren't worth it to the people in their life, and they were treated so horribly, that impacts your identity, your self-esteem, your self-worth, and self-respect. And so, one, I don't really think for many of them they know any different than to be in these type of situations and relationships, but also I don't think they can imagine I'm worth more than that, or there's another option for me.
Mm-hmm.
Or even if they were to see that, being able to visualize that for themselves is an impossibility.
Yeah. So tying that back to your life as a mom, that mothering role, when you see these kids who are seen by the world as a certain age, emotionally, mentally a certain age, experientially have had all these other experiences that have impacted and then you see all that stirred up in a bowl of identity and self-worth. When you look at them as a mom, what does that stir in you? What do you feel? What does that bring out in you that, maybe it's the injustice, the anger, but what is that is kind of maybe the fire in your belly for this space?
For me personally, I we struggle because I want to give all of them that experience of love and of being seen and heard and valued the way that like a mom would and should love them. Like I want that for all of them. And so sometimes, it's hard because it's hard for me to say this out loud, but there are capacity issues.
Wait, we have that on film right now, Mike.
You record it.
She just said she has a capacity.
Or just pretend I didn't say that. But I want to fight for each of them to be able to have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And like whatever the cost. And so there's so much urgency for me. I absolutely love getting to connect with all of our young adults. And now that we have this incredible opportunity and ministry in place through Don't Go Alone, knowing that this is available to these young adults is like, it's just so amazing and brings me so much joy and fuels the fire of like, oh my word, each young adult now that we are connected with, that we hear about, that we can talk to about this opportunity, I'm like, let's go, and it's really sweet to see how excited they are about it, because they all feel like it's too late for me and this was never going to be an option. Like I aged out. I was never adopted. I could never have a family. And the look on some of their faces when I say like, no, this is what we want you to be able to have and for you to experience. Often, this one young man recently just kept saying after I was talking to him, I need a family. That's what I need. I just need a family. I'm like, I know. That's why I'm here. So yeah, I'm so excited and thrilled and full of joy that we get to do this, but it's the pain of knowing what they so desperately need and are missing that drives me to keep going.
And also, I think in that, like, even what you guys are talking about, how you've had some intense moments of fellowship about this area of your life, but ultimately your passion, your drive, and the path that maybe you thought the Lord was going to take you on in this lane of like, I have this heart for youth that have aged out. We need to bring them all into our home and raise all of them. Wouldn't have been wrong, but your capacity would have been limited for how many kids you can serve. And I know for our story, I mean, that was one of our stories. I was like, I'm not getting a van and taking all these children. I can't do it. So how can I help other people do this? And I think that's where I've gotten to walk alongside you and see the Lord take your drive and your passion, what you actually wanted to bring in your home, and actually multiply it even greater than anything you ever could have done just inside of your home.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. And just shout out and credit to Pam Parrish, who started Don't Go Alone in Georgia, and she and her husband adopted 7 girls out of foster care, 5 over the age of 18, and out of their family's journey was born this idea of like, hey, other kids that are aging out should be able to experience family connection, and that's where Don't Go Alone was born and created. And so now that we can bring that opportunity and that ministry program, but it's truly like relationship and ministry to San Antonio, it's like, oh my word, that God allowed me to intersect with her and open this door and this opportunity is totally to your point. Like, I couldn't have envisioned it at the time, but he was preparing the way that whole time. And yes, now, I mean, I'm speaking it out. Like, we're going to see hundreds of kids get to have families here. And we couldn't have done hundreds.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
So in this, like, leaning into this space, and, obviously you're coaching up other families to lean into this space and mentor these youth. What are some of the fears that you see consistently people wrestle with in stepping towards these youth and really not having any kind of guarantees? It kind of goes back to a thread that we've been on for a little bit of control and lack thereof. What are some of the things that you see and kind of pop up that people wrestle with the most when stepping into these kiddos' lives?
You can jump in if something stand out to you. I think there's probably some fear over what their lifestyle and choices are and might be, and how that might impact them and their own family, which is understandable. Fear of the unknown, I think. Fear of lack of control and predictability in relationship. This building a relationship with teens and young adults who have aged out, who have had so many negative experiences in relationship, make building relationship a longer journey and the trust building process longer. And so I think there's fear of, how is it going to work out? Are they going to like us? Are we going to gel? Is it going to go okay? And yeah, I don't know. I would say, I maybe feel weird saying this, but maybe fear of like inconvenience.
Sure.
Because a lot of our young adults do have a lot of needs, and they come up at any given time.
And it kind of goes back to that margin talked about,
Right.
or lack thereof, control.
Mm-hmm.
But then also I even think about what you said earlier about parenting. So maybe, if you have parented, maybe you've launched kiddos out of your home. Maybe yours were the rare ones that you were like A plus B did equal C. And so now I'm like, well, I may break my batting average here with this one, because A plus B is probably not going to equal C, and I may fail this kid, or this kid may still struggle, even though
Right.
I'm sacrificing and I'm giving and I'm being inconvenienced, and there's almost again in the Western world of like, we want the win, and there's no win here. Like, there's not. I mean, there's progress, there's redemption, there's restoration, but there's no like, we made it to the
Yeah, and I think the win would have to be in like, who are you doing this for?
right.
Are you doing this for them? Because ultimately, if you're doing it for them or you're doing it for you, you're doing it for the wrong reason. Like, you have to be doing it for Jesus, like for the love of God, out of obedience to him, through the power of the Holy Spirit. Because to what you're saying, we're not here because we're guaranteeing outcomes.
Right.
We're here because they deserve to be loved the way God intended for them to be loved originally.
Period.
And that's it. So even that goes against that, what we were talking about earlier, of like the idol of maybe predictability or progress or success or efficiency or whatever achievement, well, you got to throw all that out because that's not what we're doing. Yeah.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think like what is the goal here? Like, is the goal to try to fix this kid? Like, hey, they have all these issues. I'm going to be the one to fix them. I mean, if that's your mindset, then boy, oh boy, good luck, because we can't. But our goal ultimately is to be present and to show them love and to be available. And one thing I just consistently remember in talking to a lot of these kids, these young people that are like wanting mentor families, is how brave they are. Because for them, the family has been their greatest source of pain.
Mm-hmm.
And so the fact that they're saying, "Hey, look, I'm willing to give this family thing another shot." We had a young lady over at our house for dinner one night, and at the end, we just thanked her for coming over, and she got really teary eyed, and she told Ariel that this was the first time she ever sat at a table where there was a mother and a father
Mm-hmm.
in her entire 21 years of life. Had never been at a thing. I mean, we have no like for I did that every night as a kid growing up.
Right.
My kids do that every night with us, and so we have no idea of what life has been like for them. And our goal isn't to again try to fix all of their issues, because we're not. But our goal is we got not going to be able to. But our goal is to just be available and to love them.
And I think the difference, the word difference here is like not fixing. We want to be involved in their healing process.
Right.
Like Jesus came to heal us, to restore us to himself. And we have this opportunity to be a part of the healing journey and the healing process for a young adult. And healing happens in relationship in a human context, but in a spiritual context too, right? Like that's our healing, our spiritual healing happens in relationship with the Lord. And so to be able to be agents of healing, and I say at our trainings, like, this is a ministry of presence. Like, I'm just asking you to be present for them, like, so that, yeah, thinking of it in that way.
And one thing I would just encourage is some of the stuff that these kids need is actually not that hard to be able to help them with. Like, there was a young man who told me that his dream was to go to UTSA, but he couldn't afford it. And I said, "Well, how do you know you can't afford it?" And he's like, "Well, it's just going to be too expensive." And I said, "Well, we have some connections there. Maybe we can introduce you to their financial assistance department, and they may be able to help you out." And so I did shot off an email, sent it, introduced them, and now he's actually going to UTSA, and he's going to start in January. And he had an $80 application fee, and he's like, I can't really, I don't have the money. I just started a job. I haven't gotten paid yet, so I can't pay this $80 application fee. And I don't know what I'm going to do, so I probably won't be able to go to UTSA. And I was like, dude, our church would love to help you with that. Like, that's not a big deal. Like, we can easily. And so now he, just going through. So it's easy things, but for some of these kids, like the $80 application fee was insurmountable, and it was going to deter him from continuing to go there. And now he's enrolled, and he's ready to rock. And so it's just even little things that they need encouragement with, that are low-hanging fruit, that are not that hard, that can really help change the trajectory of their lives. So
that's one of the things I think we've seen in walking. I mean, I saw in our foster journey, but even seen as we've, walked in this don't go alone space, is that there are so many points of friction, so many hurdles, and they, because of their trauma, because they, they've never believed in themselves. Nobody's ever believed in them, that it just, like, to Mike's point, it becomes insurmountable. And they see these things as like, well, I can't do that, so that door's shut. Rather than, maybe young adults who have grown up in a home that's like, no, tackle the hill, like, you can do it. But these kids have never heard that. And then that becomes the thing, the stumbling block, the way the enemy just like keeps them entrapped in these cycles of like, uh, you know, generational poverty, generational trauma, generational abuse. And they just stay in this because they haven't ever seen anything else. And that, to your point, is that's what you get to be for them. Just present, just show them something else. I read a book one time. It was called 3 little words. And this girl who had grown up in foster care had been in like 30 homes. And she said one night, she was at a home for one night. She sat at a table. Dad came home from work, kissed mom. They sat at the table. They ate dinner together. They chatted it up. She left the next day. And she said, from that moment on, she's like, that's what I want. Because she'd never seen it before, but she knew when she was in it, sitting at the table, she was like, that's what I want. And that's what because now she had a vision.
Yeah.
Something besides what she'd grown up in.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I encourage our mentor families, like, your home, aside from the gift of your presence and relationship, your home is like your greatest asset, because just opening your home to your young adult for them to be with you, have a meal, catch a vision for what else is out there and what could be a possibility for them is huge. Like, we underestimate how powerful that is, you know.
Exactly. 100%. So, and all that, what keeps you up at night about youth that are aging out?
Lately, just the way the last couple weeks have gone in my time with some of the newer young adults, I am just, I don't know, I'm still shocked at what these teens and young adults have gone through. And I am so incredibly proud of them. And they have been so brave and so resilient and shown so much courage to push through. It is incredible to me. And I think that I know that there's so much potential that they have. And so I'm encouraged because of what we're doing, but also know, like, wow, there's so much that still needs to happen. You know, like, well, I don't want to, I know how many people we have in our city and how many people really want to do something. And we have incredible mentor families that are part of DGA. And I think I know, like, hey, we still have so much ground to take and to cover in this space. And I'm dreaming about a time when all the teens that are in care, well, I'm dreaming about a day when there aren't teens in care anymore because they've all found homes and families. But maybe for those that are, they already know that if they make it to 18, they're going to be able to still get a family. And it's something that's just like commonplace that we talk about in San Antonio. Oh, don't worry. If you're a teen in foster care in San Antonio, you get to,
There's a bench.
Yeah, you know, like, I don't know. I just think that would be so incredible and so cool. So yeah, I think this is really just the beginning here. And there's so much opportunity for us to step in to the stories of these kids' lives, into their healing journey. Yeah, it's going to be amazing to see what God does.
So as we kind of wrap up, can you share with us just, no names, maybe even combining a few stories, but just kind of give our listeners a picture of the Cliff Notes version of some of these youth that you've had across you at a dinner table. You've paired them with mentors. Give them a picture of what you see day in and day out with these youth.
Well, I'll give one and then let you share. But I speak in quite a few different churches. And so I asked a young lady, I said, has come to our church, is a part of our church. I said, do you mind if I change your name, but if I tell your story? And when I go and speak, because I want people to know what your life has been like. And she's like, I would love that. Like, absolutely, you can tell my story. And so I said, well, can you tell me your story? And so she was extremely honest and told us that when she was 2 months old, she and her siblings got removed, and they were placed in foster care. There wasn't a family that could take all of them. So she ended up with a family, and they didn't adopt her. When she was 4, she got taken. and that she had bounced around and been in 108 different placements. 108 different places.
So on average, that's what, every 2 months
Yeah, at least.
moving.
And I said to her, I was like, oh my gosh, like, why? She said, well, primarily because my behavior. And I said, well, so were you just like ticked all the time and you were super angry and whatever and you just erupted? And she said, well, yeah, that's part of it. Like, I did have a lot of anger, but also nobody ever told me, like, hey, you can't put your hands on people. Nobody ever taught me how to behave. They just were scared of me and they gave up on me. And so I had to go somewhere else. And so that was one of the young people that we've connected with. And not gonna lie, she's still very involved in our lives, and it is hard. And I do understand why people run away, because it's messy and it's difficult, and they challenge and they push, and it's hard. But yeah, that's just one little snapshot of 100. I can't imagine 108 different placements when
Yeah.
she wouldn't even know. The caseworker would just show up with a bag, shove her stuff in, and go on to the next.
Yeah. Ariel.
First, I would say that, when you hear stories on the news about children dying tragically in care, or horrible cases of abuse and neglect, I think I thought that was very, very rare, in that I wouldn't interact with some of those extreme stories. And now what I'm coming to find out, unfortunately, is that those type of things are very much more common than I realized. And our average teen that's aging out has been in care for at least 10 years, has experienced what we call professional foster care homes, where they are basically just homes that, like, people use kids to make money, like, don't really love them, don't take care of them. It's not an actual family. It's like a horrible thing. And so they don't know that, like, you could actually be in a foster home where a family would love you. And then they've experienced all of them, really, group homes, or like institutional settings where kids are living together. And unfortunately, I know people that are working there are amazing and are working so hard, and it's nothing against that at all. I think it's just that the kids ultimately don't feel like they're ever home, and don't really feel like they belong there. So they're really hungry for something else, and that causes a lot of issues, because a lot of them don't want to stay in those environments. And then most of them have undergone abuse in multiple different forms. And most of them, it's not like, oh, this one just experienced this type of abuse. Most of them, it's multiple. And then they end up getting to be 18, and then at that point, the message that's reinforced to you is, I am alone, because nobody was able to take care of me. And so, sadly, that is really almost every story.
Yeah. And what percentage of these kids would you say have experienced sexual abuse?
Oh gosh, it's got to be like
Very-
80.
It's very high.
Yeah.
It'd be very high.
Very
Yeah.
high. Yeah. And that oftentimes at the hands of somebody that is supposed to be protecting them,
Right.
a parent, a grandparent, an uncle, an aunt.
Right.
The most, I would say, egregious violation of that relationship. And again, goes back to what we were talking about with identity and behaviors, and like to your point of the young lady who was in and out of all different kinds of, because she, there's that story about Josh Shipp, and he talks about, like, my goal was to try to get kicked out of this place faster than I got kicked out of the last one, because I wasn't going to give you a chance to
Right.
love me, because you're just going to hurt me anyways. So let me
Right.
just get this over with, and I think that's the part that we're most, people that are stepping in these kids' lives, that's the scary part, rightfully so. But that is the challenge to helping these kiddos and find that healthy relationship, because those relationships that hurt them still haunt them.
Right.
And
Right.
honestly, it's kept me from when I get a window into these stories, and like I sit with the kid who tells me that his mom used to burn his clothes when he would misbehave, and she would just put his clothes in a pile and light them on fire and like throw them outside, and I mean just horrible things that were at the hands of his parents. And then they, like, several of these kids have told us that they were sexually abused as little kids. Like, no wonder they struggle with their sexual identity. No wonder, like we're going, well, gee, why are you a part of that community? Mom, are you kidding me? How could you not be confused?
Right. 100%.
How could you not be? And it keeps us from being judgmental. And honestly, this has probably helped me in my walk with the Lord, getting to have meals with them and learning about them. And it's really softened my heart, and I think aligned my heart with the heart of Jesus in a very deep way. And so, I mean, I've probably benefited from my relationship with many of them more than they have.
Mhm. So, Ariel, tying it up, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you'd like to share before we end today?
I don't know if there's anything we haven't talked about, but if any of our young adults ever were to listen to this, I do want to just tell you how proud I am of you. And that we see you and that we love you and that you're so valuable and you are so, so worth it. And Jesus loves you, and you're so brave, and just keep going. And to thank all of the people that have stepped up and said yes to love these kids. And to those of you who might be thinking about it, I would just encourage you to keep thinking about it. And if the Lord pricks your heart or your spirit, to trust him that he will be able to carry you when you say yes. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for joining us again today and with the Crafts. And if you missed Mike's, it's an episode previous to this, but we'll continue sharing incredible stories of ordinary people stepping into crazy, messy things and getting to see God transform them and transform other lives. Thanks for joining us.